Hello, everyone. My name is Emily with Rising Stars Football Academy, and welcome back to another installment of Feature Friday, a segment dedicated to featuring different student athletes and coaches and their experiences with our camps and combines. Now, today I'm joined by Jordan Hill. Jordan played his collegiate football at Penn State University from 2009 to 2012. In the 2013 NFL Draft, the Seattle Seahawks took him as the 87th overall pick, and he signed a multi-year rookie contract with the team. That upcoming season, the Seahawks and Hill went on to defeat the Broncos in Super Bowl 48. Hill spent a handful of seasons in the league before ending his professional football career, but has since been hired as a head football coach at Trinity High School. We are so excited to have him here with us today, so thanks for joining us, Jordan. How's it going?
Good, good. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'd like to start off talking a little bit about what you were like as a kid and your involvement with sports. So you're a local guy from Steelton. So what was it like playing youth sports in that community, and what are some of the different sports that you tried out?
So growing up, I played the big three. So it had been football, basketball, baseball. Football was actually the last. I wasn't able to play it because I was always a bigger kid. So really grew up playing basketball and baseball. In Steelton, it's really a basketball town. That's what we have the most state championships in, most districts, and overall championships there. Produced a lot of great players. So growing up, that's the sport that I thought I was going to play and be really good at. But obviously, I can't be a 6'1" center. So I had to choose football.
And do you think your overall football abilities increased or improved playing these other sports? Like, do you think most coaches look for athletes who can play multiple sports and multiple positions?
Absolutely. At the college level, it's the more you can do. And then when you get to the NFL, that's like a true saying. The more you can do, the more value that you have to the team. So baseball translated well with eye-hand coordination. And the football, for me as a defensive lineman specifically, and seeing like offensive linemen pass that in their hands and when they're shooting, being able to time that stuff up right. And then basketball, a lot of my game in football was all footwork related to basketball. Any types of pass rush moves that I had, it really translated to like a crossover and the footwork that it detailed.
And I know you were pretty successful in high school with your athletic achievements, which ultimately led you to play at the next level. But can you talk a little bit about some of those achievements and some of the state titles that you won?
Yeah, so I was able to win 2 state titles in single A and then one basketball in triple A. My senior year, I was single A player of the year as a defensive lineman. Won district every year in football, came second place in basketball that year. We won the state championship. We had good battles with Susquehanna. That was our crosstown rival. It was a rare occasion where we played them in every championship we had that year in basketball. So we beat them in the mid-pens, I want to say by like 20, came back. Ben Dupree hit a buzzer beater in the district championship at the Giant Center. And then we get kicked out west, and then we both battle our ways to the state championship up at the BJC, up at Penn State. We got up there and handled business again.
Now, you mentioned Penn State. So can you take us through your recruitment process and why you ultimately decided to choose Penn State to play your collegiate football when you're having other offers from Temple, Pittsburgh, and even Rutgers?
So I had a different recruitment. Started off hot. Penn State, West Virginia, both started recruiting me as a sophomore. Penn State, obviously, they jump-started the whole recruitment process, had a bunch of teams calling, a bunch of teams coming in and visiting and whatnot. And I was just so focused on playing fullback and linebacker that they really wanted me to play defensive line. That's when I kind of just focused on all the other schools that were recruiting me. I thought I was a bigger guy, but I thought I was still a good enough athlete to be able to play linebacker or fullback. Would go to all the camps and whatnot and do really well. Rutgers ultimately was like, hey, we're going to let you play whatever position you want. Obviously, they're like, I think you'd be a good defensive lineman. But they were the first team to pull the trigger on me. That was like right after they were number 3 in the country. Ray Rice was their running back. Leonard was the fullback. He was a big-time guy. Obviously, me playing fullback, I watched that a lot. And Coach Shiano was building a class there. Was building a heck of a recruiting class. Honestly, it was the best recruiting class they've ever had. It was that 2009 class. They even lost, I want to say it's like close to 4 commits to Penn State that were originally committed to Rutgers and then flipped to Penn State, me being one of them. Growing up, I was a Penn State fan. So in the end game, I wanted to be an in-state college. It really came down to Rutgers pick and Penn State. One of the craziest things was I actually was getting recruited by Alabama, and Nick Saban was there, but they hadn't won a national championship yet. So that didn't hold as much weight to me. If I would have ended up going there, I would have won 3 national championships in 4 years. Ultimately, my junior year, I committed to Rutgers and kind of always, in the back of my mind, just thought I could play at Penn State. The more and more I kept continuing to go through the recruitment process, it was just like, hey, that's where I wanted to be. And then a lot of people just doubted me that I couldn't play in the Big Ten, that I couldn't play at Penn State, that Rutgers was the school I should go to because it was a smaller school and me playing single A. It was just a lot of doubt. And I'm a guy that, a lot of people do doubt me because I don't always look the part. Never did. So always an undersized defensive lineman. And I carry that chip every single day. And then I got an inkling that Penn State was going to be at a game. It was actually the semifinal game before our state championship my senior year. And I called Rutgers and decommitted that morning because I knew Penn State was going to be there. And I wanted to be loud and clear. My recruitment was open, and that's where I wanted to be. Ended up going out and having the best game I probably ever played. It was all history from there.
Now, as a freshman, what was the biggest adjustment that you need to make on the football field to be successful at that next level?
I would say just trust in myself. It wasn't a confidence thing, but just really going from playing in a small school in a small town in Stilton, and then at 18 years old, I'm playing against Michigan in the Big House. That's a big jump. I wasn't a guy that went in and redshirted. I kind of went in and played right away. So just going in all those schools that you would play video games at, NCAA college football, played, in the horseshoe, played in the Big House, played at Beaver Stadium. Now Beaver Stadium's your home turf. So kind of getting over that wow factor. The game in itself, obviously, it's a lot faster, but the way that I was coached up by Larry Johnson, you were going to be well prepared.
Now, from an academic perspective, what kind of standard did the coaching staff hold their players to? Like, what were the types of things that the team would do in order to meet and even exceed their academic requirements?
At Penn State, that was their reputation. It was like they wanted their kids to graduate. They didn't want them to leave early. For me, coming from Stilton, that was a concern from them because at the time it wasn't the best of academic schools. So all the support in the world, almost to an extent where it was too much. My freshman year, I wouldn't get back to my dorm room probably close to like 10 o'clock at night. And I was at the facility at 2:45. Got practice, meetings, and then get a quick dinner, and I had to be right back over for study hall. And now that goes to say a lot of the Division One programs does not all do that now. But back then, that's when it was kind of really getting started. And Penn State was one of the leaders in that. Making sure that we graduated was a huge thing. And then for me personally, that's something that I also wanted to do. I mean, that was something I doubted myself. Like, hey, could I actually graduate from a university like this? And I was able to do that.
Now, you mentioned playing in Beaver Stadium. So, what is that atmosphere like, and how magnified are the whiteout games versus, Ohio State or your other big rivals?
There's nothing like it. I'd like to say I got as close as I could in the NFL, playing in CenturyLink in Seattle. That and Arrowhead, Kansas City Chiefs were the two loudest NFL stadiums, but still doesn't compare really to Beaver Stadium in the atmosphere. The atmosphere is unmatched, especially in a lot of places in the Big Ten. If you're going to school and you're looking for that college atmosphere and the culture, that's where you want to kind of play your football because you're going and playing in front of 110,000, 108, 103, and that's weekly. That's a lot of people, a lot of exposure, and it's loud. And you're playing against really good football players, football teams. I played with a lot of guys from Alabama. When Alabama came up in 2011, we had a whiteout. I think it was like week 2 or 3. And when I got out to Seattle, one of my teammates that got drafted with Jesse Williams, he was like, that was insane. He was like, they talked about Death Valley and LSU and all that stuff. They're like, I've never heard it louder or crazier up in State College.
Now, a lot of the times when colleges or universities goes through a big shift or a transition, especially in the coaching staff, a lot of the top guys decide to transfer to other schools. But you actually decided to stay at Penn State and finish out your career there. So, why did you make that decision? And what were those discussions like with your teammates about trying to rebuild that program?
It really kind of stems from Stilton. I'm a very prideful person and very loyal to an extent. And I was taught that way in Stilton. My mom, my dad, my father-in-law, mother-in-law all graduated from Stilton, all of my uncles. You look at the situation, yeah, it was a situation that was just ugly. And for us players, it was something that, we were just playing the cards that were dealt. We had nothing to do with anything that had ever happened, yet we were the ones that had to suffer the consequences. At that time, the school had helped me out so much. Coach Larry Johnson was a huge influence for me to be there. If he was going to be there, I wanted to play for him. In my opinion, he is the best defensive line coach ever. You talk about greatest ever, greatest of all time. NFL, college, high school. Larry Johnson's it. Making that decision, obviously, if we weren't going to play football and we got like the death penalty, which they tried to get us close to it as possible, I would have been forced to leave. But if we were playing football, that's where I was going to stay. That's where I was going to finish, get the job done, and finish kind of what we had started. And once we got in that same mindset, us, a lot of the seniors, a lot of guys, followed suit. And then there was a good group of young guys, Adrian Amos, Donovan Smith, Kyle Carter, and Bill Belton. Once they made their minds up that they were staying, because they were the guys that were next up. When you get those caliber kids to stay, then you're fine.
And as an upperclassman, you became one of the best defensive players in the Big Ten. So, what motivated you to reach that level of play? And when did you realize that you actually had a shot at going pro?
My friends can attest to this. It was after my first real camp practice, my freshman year. And I went up there and I had a great day. Like great practice, one of my better ones I probably had. And I called him. I was just like, hey, I think I'm able to go to the NFL. They're like, you're going redshirt. I'm like, all right, I'm going to be able to make it. But to say that, it was a lot of work that went into it. My confidence at that time knew that I could play, in the NFL, but the work that went in the next 4 years is what got me there. Larry Johnson, obviously, he's the defensive line coach and assistant head coach at Ohio State, and then Elijah Robinson, defensive line coach at Texas A&M. They worked me for my next 3 years after that freshman year. They seen the potential, and their vision for me was a lot bigger than I had for myself. And every single day they worked me. My sophomore year, I felt like I wasn't even good enough to play football, let alone be at Penn State. And then that was just how hard they had worked me. And then once it clicked, they're doing this for a reason. Started listening and I started doing everything the right way in terms of technique and playing relentless. It was basically a wrap from there.
And as you were preparing for the draft, what aspects of your game did you think differentiated yourself from other defensive tackles?
The things that they said were negatives. Me being an undersized guy, 6'1", at the time was 285, and wanting to play nose guard in the NFL. It was just like, hey, I'm going to be a little shorter, so I'm going to be smaller than these 6'6", 6'7" guys. So natural leverage and then my quickness. My quickness helped me the whole way in Penn State and the NFL because they were bigger guys, they were stronger, but I knew how to leverage my quickness and my height. And then obviously I go back to, like the original question, like, hey, how did other sports help you? And that's really where like my basketball background came into play.
And on draft night, what were the conversations like with your agent and eventually when the Seahawks called you up?
Crazy night. Just had a bunch of my boys from Hilton come up, a bunch of my teammates from Penn State, a lot of people that had a lot of influence on me, came up, coaches, teachers, and we just really watched it in my apartment in State College. I was projected second or third rounder, and I had got a call from the Cowboys that I was going there. They had two third-round picks, and I got a text, and they're like, hey, stay by your phone, get ready. We got two. We're going to snag you with one of them. And both of them go by. And when both of those went by, I'm just like, I took the wind out of the whole room because everybody was excited and they see my demeanor. Through the whole process, that was the team I talked to the most. Went down there on a visit. They came up to State College, worked me out, visited, had dinner, was in conversation with them probably every other day, understood their defensive coordinator and basically the style that they played defensive line was the same that we did at Penn State. Then when both of them went by, it was just like, all right, I may not go tonight. I want to say it was 3 picks later after that. Now it felt like almost an hour went by in those 3 picks, but my phone starts ringing and it was Seattle. Seattle was calling, drafting me, John Snyder and Pete Carroll.
So you finally got the call, and then next thing you understand is, oh, I got to go play and practice with these guys. So, what was the atmosphere like going into that first preseason practice, and what surprised you about the way that the Seahawks and Coach Pete Carroll operated?
They start right away. So I got drafted that last weekend in April, graduated the first week in May, and then that second weekend, I was already in rookie minicamp practicing. So it's a quick turnaround. You get acclimated really well. I got the playbook 2 days after I got drafted, and they're like, hey, learn it. It's truly a business. It turns into a job right away. Because if you go into that thing and you don't know your plays, you don't know certain stuff, you don't show up on time, now you get fined. But when I got out to Seattle, it was a culture shocker for me because I was coming from a program that was, very strict, no BS type of program. To when I went out to Seattle, it was a lot of free time. I would always joke around. It was like going from detention to recess. Pete Carroll wants your character to show throughout that whole organization and that program. It took me a while to kind of get used to it because I was used to a different style. And going out there was just like, hey, let your character show. But then when you step on a practice field, there's all these other guys. They're just people as well. Going out to practice, you're like, yes, this is Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor, Michael Bennett. Like, it's crazy, but at the same time, it's just like, all right, these are my teammates now, and I've got to get to work.
And what can you remember about your first time playing in Seattle?
Nothing like it. The 12s are nuts. I'd say they're the best fans in the NFL. They live and breathe out in Seattle, even throughout the whole city, not even the organization. I'm talking corporate jobs. They do Blue Friday. So if you walk around in the city on a Friday before games, everybody's wearing Seahawks jerseys. I'm talking everybody in Amazon, everybody in Boeing, Expedia, through the market, everywhere in that city, everybody's wearing a Russell Wilson and Richard Sherman jersey. But it's cool. They took the Sonics from them, so they really take pride in their football up there.
And can you talk a little bit about the Super Bowl run and your mindset going into that final game thinking we got one left. All we have to do is win one more game and then you're etched in history forever?
I mean, that year, you could just feel something special happening. The way that everybody prepared, coaches, players, the way that we meshed really well, and just every room was stacked with players, stacked with names, guys that had a lot of playing experience. In my opinion, a top five defense ever in the NFL. Because if you look at every position group, there's some star power everywhere. Throughout that whole year, it started off really in preseason. We went 4-0 in preseason, and that's when it was just like we got players at every level because it's not even your starters that are going out there playing like starters, but it's the guys that may only play special teams. There are guys that can go play and start linebacker for anybody else. We ended up going 13-3 regular season, and then once we had home field advantage, you're just not going to win it in Seattle. You earned a win if you beat us in the playoffs there. And then same thing like for high school, my motto is if we're in it, we win it. And I just took that when we were in Seattle. So it's like when we made the Super Bowl, it was just like the story's already written. It was just going to be how bad. And it got really bad for the Broncos.
It's the biggest blowout in Super Bowl history, right?
Yeah. And it was cool for me, too, because it was sort of a homecoming because I was out west all year. And then we ended up playing that Super Bowl in New York City. So it was pretty cool.
So now you're actually the head coach at Trinity High School. You were recently just hired. So what made you decide on pursuing a coaching career after your football playing career ended?
It was something that I actually denied there for a year or two, just because how I ended my playing career with injuries and just being fed up with rehab and whatnot. I was just like, man, I've given so much to the game. I'm not willing to continue to keep giving to get hurt. And then the more and more I just got around it, I was helping train kids on the side, not for money or anything. Just they reach out like, what do you know? And I'm like, let's go do some stuff now. And slowly getting integrated back into it. Helped out at Still High, volunteered there in 2017. I was actually still playing with the Lions. I tore my bicep and they told me I could go home and rehab. So I just went and helped Stilton, took a year off. And then Coach Oswald got the job at Cumberland Valley. And I knew a couple guys on staff. They reached out. And I was just like, I'll take a shot. I didn't know if I was going to really want to start coaching again. And I took like my regular day job was right down the street from Cumberland Valley. And I feel like as soon as they kind of knew that, it was on and they were getting me over there and really like his coaching staff, like Josh. It was a hard decision for me to actually leave because there's something special happening over there.
Yeah, he was on our show a couple weeks ago, and a lot of people have so much respect for him, and he's done so much
Mhm.
with the programs that he's been in. So it's nice to hear that you kind of have that connection. So I would like to talk a little bit about your relationship with Ron and how you first got
Mhm.
involved with Rising Stars Football Academy. So, what is that relationship there, and why do you feel a desire to help out with these organizations and at these camps?
Yeah, so he was one of the first people that reached out to me after my rookie year to come in. And I think it was actually before I entered my rookie season to come out and speak to kids at his camp. Real, true, like first opportunity is being a pro to go out and talk to kids and tell them how we conduct our days. And the connection was actually through both of our agents. They had gone to college together and knew each other, and they connected us together. And then I want to say for like the next 4 years, I came to every camp after that. It was just like something I knew that was going to be on the summer schedule to be able to go down there in Shippensburg and talk to his kids.
Now, you'll be a guest coach this weekend at Cumberland Valley. So, what will you be helping out with, and what are you hoping to teach our participants?
Defensive line, that's something that I got a passion for. Obviously, coaching and whatnot overall is a passion of mine, but I think I got a unique niche in defensive line coaching. So that's what I'll be doing.
And to conclude this interview here, we like to end on an inspirational note. So, what is one piece of advice that you'd like to share with any junior high or high school football player?
Have a relentless mindset in everything that you do. Goal setting is going to be a huge thing, but have a goal after a goal. Never have one major and think that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. That tunnel's going to continue to keep going. And you've got to continue to keep pushing every single day, everything you do. Football is a great life lesson and a prepare. So use it and take advantage of everything that it gives you.
Well, I'd like to thank you for speaking with me today and sharing your football insights. I look forward to seeing you at Cumberland Valley, and I know our viewers are excited to work with you on Sunday. So, thanks again and have a nice day.
Absolutely. Thank you guys.